The acrid stench of freshly printed legal documents filled the air as Karen Whitfield slammed the foreclosure notice onto my kitchen counter. $250,000. That was her demand. Per household. For landscaping. But Karen had made one critical error. She had just tried to extort a retired Brigadier General who spent 30 years dismantling criminal networks across 3 continents. Here is exactly what happened when our HOA president thought she could shake down military families for $250,000 each. You will discover the shocking real estate scam targeting veterans, the international criminal network hiding in plain sight, and how one phone call to the police backfired so spectacularly that it triggered a federal investigation spanning 4 countries. Stay with me, because the truth about what Karen was really doing with that money will blow your mind. That Tuesday morning started like any other suburban nightmare. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 a.m., and there stood Karen Whitfield in her signature designer athleisure, clutching a stack of official-looking papers like they were holy scripture. My wife Rebecca answered the door, still in her Army PT uniform from her morning run. Karen barely glanced at the military insignia before launching into her rehearsed speech. The Willowbrook Community Enhancement Project requires immediate funding, Karen announced with manufactured authority. Each household must contribute $250,000 within 30 days, or face foreclosure proceedings. Rebecca's expression remained perfectly neutral. 28 years of military service had taught her to read situations before reacting. May I see the community vote approving this assessment? Karen's spray-tanned face twitched. The HOA board has full authority to implement necessary improvements. Your signature is required immediately. But here is where Karen's first mistake became apparent. Rebecca Martinez Thompson was not just any retired officer. She was a decorated Brigadier General who specialized in financial crimes investigation for military intelligence. The woman had tracked terrorist funding networks through Swiss bank accounts and dismantled money laundering operations in 12 countries. What would you do if someone showed up at your door demanding $250,000 with zero documentation? Drop your response in the comments, because Rebecca's next move was absolutely brilliant. She asked one simple question that sent Karen into panic mode. Which licensed contractor provided the cost estimates for this landscaping project? Karen stammered, shifted her weight, then delivered the line that would ultimately destroy her entire operation. We do not need outside contractors. My ex-husband's company, Whitfield Development Solutions, will handle all improvements at fair market rates. There it was, the smoking gun Rebecca needed. But Karen was just getting started with her criminal stupidity. Over the next week, Karen launched a systematic campaign of intimidation that would make a suburban Napoleon proud. Legal notices appeared daily in our mailbox. Phone calls at dinner time. Surprise visits when Rebecca was at her part-time consulting job. The beautiful part was watching Karen dig her own grave deeper with each interaction. She had clearly researched the neighborhood demographics and identified military families as easy targets. Recent transfers, unfamiliar with local laws, financially stressed from relocations. What Karen did not know was that Rebecca had been quietly documenting everything. Every conversation recorded on her phone. Every legal notice photographed with timestamps. Every interaction logged in a spreadsheet that would make an FBI analyst weep with joy. Then came the morning that changed everything. Karen arrived with 2 additional board members, a notary, and what appeared to be an eviction specialist. The theatrical production was designed for maximum psychological impact. Final notice, Mrs. Martinez, Karen declared, deliberately mispronouncing Rebecca's last name. Pay the assessment or face immediate legal action. Rebecca smiled that particular military smile that had made insurgent commanders nervous across 3 war zones. I need to speak with my husband about liquidating investments. May I call him at the Pentagon where he currently works in financial intelligence? The color drained from Karen's face like someone had pulled a plug. That evening, Karen made her second catastrophic error. Unable to intimidate Rebecca through normal channels, she decided to weaponize law enforcement. The 911 call, which we later obtained through public records, was a masterpiece of false reporting. Karen claimed Rebecca had threatened her with violence, described fictional aggressive behavior, and suggested she feared for her physical safety. 20 minutes later, Officer Marcus Johnson arrived at our front door. Young, professional, clearly taking the call seriously. Rebecca answered wearing her old BDUs while organizing her military commendations for an upcoming veteran ceremony. "Ma'am, we received a report of threatening behavior. I need to ask you some questions." Rebecca nodded respectfully. "Of course, officer. Before we begin, may I provide identification?" She handed over her military ID, driver's license, and retired officer credentials. Officer Johnson glanced at the identification, then did a double take. That would have been comedy gold if the situation were not so serious. His entire posture transformed. Shoulders straightened. Voice shifted to formal military protocol. "General Martinez, ma'am, I apologize for the circumstances of this visit." The shift was immediate and unmistakable. Years of military training had kicked in. Officer Johnson was no longer dealing with a civilian complaint. He was addressing a superior officer, and his respect was genuine. What happened next was better than any courtroom drama Hollywood could script. Rebecca invited Officer Johnson inside and methodically presented her documentation, the illegal HOA demands, Karen's admission about using her ex-husband's company, the pattern of targeting military families, the complete absence of proper board votes or community input. Officer Johnson studied the evidence with growing concern. Then he asked the question that opened the floodgates. "General, in your professional opinion, does this appear to be a coordinated scheme?" Rebecca smiled that dangerous smile again. "Officer, in my professional opinion, this appears to be a textbook real estate fraud operation with possible federal implications." Meanwhile, Karen was calling the police station every 30 minutes, demanding to know why no arrest had been made. Each call was logged and recorded, creating a beautiful paper trail of her desperation. By the following morning, Rebecca had contacted 3 federal agencies and activated a network of military intelligence contacts that would make most criminals wet themselves. The investigation that followed was swift and merciless. Karen's ex-husband, David Whitfield, had been running a sophisticated real estate manipulation scheme. The process was diabolic in its simplicity. Karen would impose impossible HOA assessments on targeted properties. Families unable to pay would be forced to sell quickly at below-market prices. David's company would swoop and with cash offers 30% below market value. But here's where the story gets truly insane. The money trail led investigators to discover that David's company was a front for an international money laundering operation. Chinese nationals were using the artificially cheap American real estate to clean illicit funds from cryptocurrency and human trafficking operations. Rebecca had stumbled onto a criminal network that stretched from suburban Arizona to organized crime syndicates in 3 countries. Word spread to the neighborhood like wildfire. Other military families came forward with similar stories. Retired Marine Colonel James Patterson had been hit with a $75,000 assessment for pool repairs. Navy veteran Sarah Kim faced foreclosure over a $15,000 fine for unapproved mailbox colors. The pattern was undeniable. Karen had systematically targeted military families, gambling that their transient lifestyle and unfamiliarity with local laws would make them easy victims. What she had not counted on was military community solidarity. Rebecca organized neighborhood meetings that looked more like military briefings, evidence boards, timeline analyses, coordinated documentation efforts. Within 2 weeks, they had identified 37 potential victims and compiled a case file that would make federal prosecutors salivate. The beautiful part was watching Karen's panic intensify as her victims transformed into prosecutors. The FBI Financial Crimes Unit descended on Willowbrook like a tactical operation. Search warrants for Karen's home, office, and bank records. Simultaneous raids on David's development company and 3 associated properties. Karen's arrest was captured on a neighbor security camera and became neighborhood legend. She emerged from her house in designer pajamas and handcuffs, screaming about her rights while agents loaded boxes of evidence into unmarked vans. The charges were staggering. 18 federal felonies, including wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, and violations of the Service Members Civil Relief Act. David faced additional charges for real estate fraud and serving as an unregistered foreign agent. But the investigation was far from over. Federal investigators discovered that Karen and David's operation was just one node in a massive international network. The artificially cheap real estate purchases were being used to establish residency for foreign nationals involved in espionage activities. The Chinese connection led to the discovery of a technology theft ring operating through universities across 3 states. Military family displacement was not just profitable, it was strategic, clearing areas around defense contractors and military installations for foreign surveillance operations. Rebecca's accidental discovery of the HOA scam had unraveled a national security threat that had been operating undetected for 7 years. Karen's trial was a masterclass in how not to defend financial crimes. Her attorney attempted to portray her as a dedicated community volunteer who made honest mistakes in property management. The prosecution response was devastating. Rebecca testified for 6 hours, methodically dismantling every aspect of Karen's defense with military precision. Bank records showing Karen had personally stolen over $400,000 from community funds. Text messages revealing her racist motivations for targeting minority military families. Recorded conversations where she bragged about forcing military brats to sell their homes. The jury deliberated for 47 minutes. Guilty on all 18 counts. The federal judge showed no mercy. Karen received 25 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. David got 32 years for his role in the international conspiracy. Their assets were seized and liquidated, with proceeds distributed to victim families. The Chinese nationals involved in the money laundering operation were deported. The university professors involved in technology theft faced their own federal charges. The entire network collapsed like a house of cards. But the most satisfying consequence was yet to come. Rebecca worked with state legislators to pass the Military Family Protection Act, creating strict oversight for HOA activities targeting service members. The law includes criminal penalties for discriminatory assessments and mandatory legal review for any HOA demand exceeding $5,000. Willowbrook became a model community for military family support. The illegally collected assessment money was returned with interest. Karen's former position was eliminated entirely, replaced with an elected council with term limits and financial transparency requirements. The neighborhood that Karen tried to exploit through fear and intimidation transformed into one of the most protected military communities in the state. Here's what still amazes me about this entire situation. Karen thought she was targeting vulnerable military families who would not fight back. Instead, she picked a fight with someone who had spent 3 decades hunting down international criminals and had the resources to destroy her entire operation. The moral of this story is simple. Document everything, know your rights, and never underestimate the power of military precision when applied to civilian problems. If you are dealing with HOA abuse, especially as a military family, you are not powerless. Connect with your local veterans organizations. Contact your congressional representatives. And remember that bullies like Karen only succeed when good people stay silent. What is your worst HOA horror story? Drop it in the comments because I guarantee you are not alone, and sharing these experiences helps other families recognize the warning signs before they become victims. Subscribe for more HOA justice stories, because next week, I am covering the Texas HOA president who tried to ban American flags in a community full of veterans. Spoiler alert, that did not end well for her either. Remember, the best defense against HOA tyranny is an informed community that refuses to be intimidated. Until next time, keep fighting the good fight.